They blocked him from boarding, questioned his ticket, called for backup, all while ignoring one simple fact. He held the keys to a $48 million contract with their own airline. Dorian Brandt was a man of quiet confidence, his suit perfectly pressed, his collar just so. He moved through JFK's Terminal 4 like someone completely at home in the world of early mornings and late meetings. In one hand, a dark leather garment bag. In the other, a first-class boarding pass for San Francisco. He was heading to a major summit where he was the keynote speaker. At 58, Dorian had done this countless times. He wasn't someone who chased attention. He preferred quiet efficiency. But that morning, something snapped in the air the moment he reached Gate 17. The line hadn't even formed yet. A few people were nearby, sipping coffee, glued to their phones. Dorian walked up to the desk, gave a polite nod to the young woman there, and handed her his boarding pass. She didn't scan it. Instead, she looked up at him, and then looked again, slower this time. It was that look people give when they're not sure if they should speak or just stall. Dorian waited, calm. No rush in his posture, no question in his eyes. "This lane is for premium passengers only," she said, her voice surprisingly sharp. "I know," Dorian replied, his tone even. She blinked, finally scanned the boarding pass but then paused. Her hand hovered over the scanner but didn't click. She looked back at him then, whispered something to a colleague behind her. The other woman peeked over her shoulder. Dorian didn't flinch. She turned back to him, a faint flush on her cheeks. "I'm going to need to see some ID." He tilted his head slightly. "You don't usually ask for ID when scanning a pass. Is there a problem?" "It's just a security measure." Dorian knew there was no such policy. So did she. He pulled his wallet from his inside pocket and handed over his license. She held it awkwardly, then placed it on the desk without scanning anything. "Wait here for a moment." Dorian glanced down at his pass. His name was clearly printed, Dorian Brandt. He said nothing. The gate agent walked a few steps away, whispered again, this time to someone in a dark uniform. Within moments, a security officer was walking towards them. Dorian had seen this before, not often, but enough times. That sudden shift from professionalism to suspicion. The moment someone decided he didn't belong. Not because of anything he said or did, but because they couldn't imagine someone like him in first class. The security officer didn't ask questions. He just stood beside Dorian, silent, his eyes tracking him like a risk assessment checklist. Dorian, still calm, stepped back from the gate, moving to the side. He wasn't going to argue. He wasn't going to raise his voice. He wasn't going to give them the performance they were hoping for. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and made a single call. It rang once, twice, then. "Maggie, it's me. I need you to pull up the catering contract we signed with Horizon Air 2 weeks ago. The one covering their western routes." "Yeah, I'm standing at JFK, gate 17. I'll hold." He stayed on the line, eyes fixed straight ahead. No emotion, no visible frustration. The gate agent glanced over, realizing he was still there. She leaned into the mic on the desk. "We're just working through a minor issue," she said to the crowd of passengers now lining up. "Thanks for your patience." But no one was patient. A businessman whispering, "Is he causing trouble or something?" Dorian heard it. He didn't turn around. Maggie's voice returned on the phone. "Got it," questioning. "You want me to call corporate?" "No," he said softly. "Just flag it, knowing, I think they're about to recognize a problem." He hung up, slipped the phone back into his pocket. The boarding pass was still in his hand. He stood calmly as if waiting for an elevator. But that call wasn't to complain, it was to warn. Dorian Brandt didn't always wear tailored suits or fly first class. He grew up in Mansfield, Ohio, in a house with soft floorboards and louder mornings. His mother, Eunice, worked in a grocery store's produce section, her hands gentle but strong. His father, Leonard, juggled night shifts at the mill and weekend car repairs. They didn't have much, but there was always food on the table. And Dorian learned early, the way you carry yourself matters. At 15, he was up at 5 a.m. on Saturdays, helping his mother sort fruits and vegetables before the store opened. That's where he learned to tell a ripe melon by touch, how to spot a bad apple from 10 feet away, and most importantly, how to talk to people, not at them. There's a big difference, and Dorian understood it fast. By 23, he'd graduated from Kent State with a degree in agricultural business and precisely $330,000 to his name. hard-earned savings. His first business was a roadside produce stand outside Columbus. No employees, just a borrowed pickup, a tent, and enough determination to sell sweet corn like it was gold. The real shift happened in his early 30s. He spotted a gap no one else saw: sustainably grown, regionally sourced produce that could supply major grocery chains without sacrificing quality. Not some small boutique, not just a farmer's market. Real food, grown clean, delivered fast. Brandt Global Foods was born in a rented garage, with one delivery route and a laptop that crashed twice a week. He made deals directly with farms across the Midwest, slowly building a network. It took nearly 15 years before his company got a seat at the table with national suppliers. Today, Brandt Global Foods supplies over 30 high-end grocery chains, 5 university systems, and most recently, Horizon Air. The airline came to him. They wanted to reinvent their in-flight meals after a string of bad press. Dorian didn't pitch. He listened. Then he gave them a plan: seasonal produce rotations, direct farm to airline sourcing, and packaging that cut waste by half. They signed a $48 million contract, but Dorian never forgot who he was. His office wasn't decorated with awards. His lobby had no grand plaques. Instead, you'd see framed photos of his original produce stand and a wall covered in thank you notes from farmers. His assistant, Maggie, handled logistics. Dorian handled the people. He didn't like drama. He avoided attention. And he never talked about power. He just used it, quietly, when needed. So when the gate agent at JFK scanned his face more than his boarding pass, and the security guard treated him like a problem instead of a paying customer, it wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a reminder. A reminder that no matter how many contracts he signed or how many planes he helped stock, some people only see what they expect to see. And if you don't fit that image, they start looking for reasons to question you. But Dorian didn't need to raise his voice. His lifetime of actions had already spoken for him. That call he made at Gate 17, that wasn't starting a problem. That was him offering the airline a chance to fix it quietly. Because while Dorian Brandt believed in grace, he also believed in standards. None of Dorian's history mattered to Haley, the gate agent. Mid-30s, new to the job, eager to prove herself after transferring from Tulsa to JFK. Her instructions were strict: maintain order, stick to protocol, don't let anyone push boundaries. But what she lacked was experience and instinct, the kind that helps you read a person without jumping to conclusions. Passengers were lining up now, a long, impatient queue. Haley adjusted her mic, cue about needing backup. She glanced at Dorian, who stood to the side, relaxed, but still present. Her coworker Mia leaned over, questioning. Is there actually an issue? Always Haley shrugged. Dismissive. He says he's first class. Mia raised an eyebrow, skeptical. His past says he is. What's the problem? Haley frowned, defensive. Just doesn't feel right. Mia's posture shifted slightly, a silent message. Be careful. But Haley wasn't paying attention. She was too busy pretending to search for a non-existent booking note. The security officer stood by, arms crossed, glancing at Dorian. The first-class lane was thinning. Haley looked nervous but didn't want to lose face. Then Dorian's phone rang. He stepped a few feet away to answer. Maggie, I've already sent an alert to their regional VP. I also looped in Jack Renaud, head of food service integration on their end. Composed. Thank you, Dorian said quietly. Keep me posted. He hung up, still calm. At the desk, Mia was getting uncomfortable. She pulled Haley aside, urgent, whisper. Do you realize who he is? That's Dorian Brandt. His company signed the new produce deal with Horizon. Wait, what? Yeah, he owns Brandt Global Foods. They're working with us. Haley's mouth went dry. She looked back at Dorian. He hadn't moved. No anger, no confrontation. Maybe we should just board him now, Mia offered. But Haley panicked. No, if we do it now, it looks like we... A sharp voice cut her off in her earpiece. Her supervisor. Haley, I need a status on the hold at Gate 17. We're showing a delay flag. Just handling a passenger issue, but it's under control. The supervisor wasn't convinced. Make sure it is. We've got execs from corporate flying in this morning. No surprises. Haley tried to steady her hands. Dorian's calm made her feel smaller by the second. She wasn't dealing with a problem. She was becoming one. Mia turned towards him, ready to apologize. But just then, the boarding door beeped. Another passenger walked through. "What's going on with the holdup?" he asked. Haley didn't answer. Her voice was gone. Then Dorian took a slow step forward, not towards the desk, but to the glass wall overlooking the runway. He stood there, hands folded behind his back, watching luggage carts. He wasn't anxious. He wasn't in a rush. He was watching time work in his favor. Haley was watching it run out. 10 floors above the terminal, in an office overlooking the tarmac and the Manhattan skyline, Cynthia Reyes was halfway through her croissant when her desk phone rang. An urgent call forwarded twice. "This is Cynthia," she answered. "Hi, Cynthia. Maggie Geller calling on behalf of Dorian Brandt, CEO of Brandt Global Foods. We've just been alerted to an incident involving Mr. Brandt at Gate 17. "What kind of incident?" Maggie's voice was professional. "Your staff seems to have denied him boarding despite his first-class ticket. We're concerned it may escalate." Cynthia didn't waste time. She knew Dorian's name. Horizon Air had just finalized major contracts, and Brandt Global wasn't just any vendor. They were the vendor, crucial for overhauling Horizon's food service image after a disastrous social media campaign. This wasn't just bad customer service. It was a live fire in a room full of gas. "I'll handle it," Cynthia said quickly, standing up. "Is he still at the gate?" "He is," calm but clearly being mishandled. Cynthia was already out of her office, jacket in hand, heels echoing down the hallway. "Get me Sean and Elise from Brand Protection now." Meanwhile, in Minneapolis, Jack Renault's phone rang during lunch. As head of food service integration, he knew the delicate balance. "Jack," Maggie said, skipping formalities. "Dorian's being detained at the gate. JFK, Horizon staff flagged him for no reason." "You've got to be kidding me." Blunt, "Nope. He called it in personally." Jack pushed back from the table, determined. "I'll get Cynthia on it," confident. "She's already moving." Cautionary, "You might want to prep legal just in case." He hung up, started dialing. If this went public, it could dismantle months of work. Dorian Brandt was supposed to be the face of their new Fresh Flight initiative. That face was now being sidelined by someone who had no idea who they were dealing with. At Gate 17, Haley was sweating. She felt the shift, not just from Mia's silence, but from the passengers. Murmurs turned into open complaints. Phones were out, checking flight status. Still no boarding. Then, a man in a Navy suit and a Horizon ID badge walked briskly towards the gate, followed by Cynthia Reyes herself, phone still to her ear. She ended the call, lowered her phone, and surveyed the scene. Dorian didn't move. He watched her approach. He knew exactly who she was. Cynthia extended her hand, calm but direct. Calm, professional. "Mr. Brandt, I'm Cynthia Reyes, Executive Director of Regional Operations." Direct. "May I speak with you privately?" Dorian nodded once, finally slipping his phone back into his pocket. Neutral. "Of course." They stepped a few feet away. Behind them, Haley stood frozen. Cynthia took a breath, apologetic, formal. "Mr. Brandt, on behalf of Horizon Air, I want to apologize. I've already contacted our internal team, reassuring, this should not have happened. I'd like to escort you personally onto the flight." Dorian didn't react. He simply asked, calm, "Do you know what seat I was assigned?" "Factual. Seat 1A. He smiled faintly, subtly pointed. "First row. Interesting," sarcastic. "I was told this lane was for premium passengers only." Cynthia didn't blink. Firm, apologetic. "Again, I apologize." Dorian leaned in slightly. Precise, critical. "The issue isn't the mistake, Miss Reyes. It's the assumption behind it." She swallowed hard. Terse. Understood. But Dorian wasn't looking for payback. He was waiting for the truth. Haley stood motionless behind the desk. Her headset was clipped to her collar, but she wasn't speaking into it anymore. She watched Cynthia and Dorian, their conversation too quiet to hear, but loud enough to change everything. Passengers stopped boarding. The monitors still showed the flight on time, but nothing was moving. Mia avoided looking at Haley. Everyone knew something was wrong. Cynthia waved over another man. Tall, sandy hair, corporate posture. This was Justin Cole, Horizon's legal liaison. He'd been briefed in the elevator and knew better than to offer explanations. He extended his hand to Dorian. Formal, apologetic. "Mr. Brandt, I'd like to apologize personally. I understand this experience has been. Dorian cut him off gently, firm. I don't need an apology, Mr. Cole. Demanding. I need you to explain how something like this happens after we sign a $48 million. Justin paused. There was no good answer. Cynthia stepped in. Mr. Brandt, we understand the weight of the situation. We're reviewing our staff conduct and sensitivity training procedures, but we'd also like to assure you this isn't a reflection of our values. Dorian raised an eyebrow. You mean it's not a reflection of the company's values? Or it's not a reflection of the gate agent's judgment? Cynthia didn't respond. He gestured toward Haley, who looked like she might sink behind the desk. She saw a well-dressed man with a premium ticket and assumed he was in the wrong line. Not once, but repeatedly, called for security, escalated the moment I asked a question. You don't have to explain to me what that's about, I've lived it. Justin, we are prepared to issue a formal apology, should you wish, privately or publicly. Dorian's face didn't change. Coldly, you think I'm here for an apology? They hesitated. He reached into his garment bag and pulled out a thin manila folder. No fanfare. Assertive. This is a signed copy of our contract. My company now supplies every fresh item on your Western and Midwest routes. That includes produce used in your premium lounge services, by the way. So when I say that the person being blocked at the gate is your brand, I mean that literally. He handed the folder to Cynthia, who took it like a weight. Firmly. I don't want a tweet, I don't want a letter. I want better, because the next person you treat like a security risk for doing absolutely nothing, they might not have a direct line to your VP. Silence. Passengers nearby began whispering again. A woman in business class pulled out her phone, pretending to scroll but clearly recording. Justin shifted uncomfortably. Resolute. We'll initiate an immediate review and make personnel adjustments as necessary. You have my word. Dorian looked at his watch. Curtly. Good. Then we can all go about our day. Before Cynthia could escort him on board, he turned slightly and looked towards Haley. She looked pale now, holding her badge like a shield. Dorian stared at her for a second, not with anger, but with something worse. Disappointment. He didn't speak to her. He didn't need to. Cynthia waved to the flight crew, who began unblocking the gate. Dorian was led down the jet bridge, with Justin quietly behind him. Back at the gate, Mia stepped beside Haley. You don't get it, she said, her voice low, exasperated. That man's company puts food on half the trays you serve in first class. Haley didn't answer. The real moment wasn't in that conversation. It was what came next. The cabin crew had already been briefed. As Dorian stepped onto the plane, he was greeted not with the usual robotic smile, but with a level of attention that felt more like a quiet apology. A flight attendant named Jordan offered to take his garment bag, and another immediately brought him a bottle of water. Mr. Brandt, if there's anything you need before takeoff, just say the word. Dorian didn't react much. He wasn't interested in gestures. He took his seat in 1A, placed the water down without touching it, and exhaled through his nose. Not relief, just breath, controlled and measured. Outside, something strange was happening. The terminal had come to a crawl. Passengers were checking the boards more often. First, Gate 17's status shifted from boarding to delayed. Then within 10 minutes, 2 more nearby gates changed to the same. A man at Gate 18 was told they were experiencing an internal systems review. It wasn't just Dorian's flight. Across the concourse, 3 more Horizon Air departures were delayed with vague reasons. Operational hold, technical processing. In truth, corporate had issued a soft shutdown, a quiet pause. Cynthia Reyes, after escorting Dorian, walked straight into a secure meeting room. She was on a call with legal, HR, and crisis management. The directive was clear. Before this incident went public, everything needed to be assessed. Gate logs, staff notes, internal comms. Every employee who had direct contact with Dorian that morning was being pulled aside. No one would admit it, but the plane wasn't going anywhere until the company knew exactly how far the damage might go. Back on board, Dorian sat with his eyes closed. He wasn't angry, he wasn't flustered, but his calm wasn't serenity. It was experience, the kind that comes from decades of having to pretend that things don't sting just because you're used to them. He thought about his father, Leonard, who once got turned away from a car dealership because the manager said he didn't look like he could afford it. He thought about his first investor meeting where someone mistook him for the valet. And he thought about how, after all this time, it was still happening, just at a higher altitude. Jordan came back. "Mr. Brandt, we've been asked to delay departure briefly. They're working through something with the terminal team. We'll keep you updated." Dorian nodded. Jordan hesitated, then added, "I saw what happened out there. It wasn't right." Dorian opened his eyes. "Thank you." Silence lingered. Then Jordan said, "I told my younger brother to watch your talk at the sustainability conference last year. He's studying agri-science. You made it feel real for him. Just thought you should know." Dorian looked at him for the first time since boarding. A small smile, not performative, just human. "I appreciate that." As Jordan walked away, the pilots stepped out of the cockpit. Their voices were low, but not low enough. Dorian caught a phrase. "Ground hold, no idea how long." And somewhere in the back of the plane, a man groaned. "Figures. This airline never gets it together." Dorian didn't respond. He leaned back and watched the clouds. He'd done his part. The rest wasn't up to him. 20 minutes later, the internal report reached Cynthia's desk. The gate logs were clean. No threats, no disturbances. The only irregularity? A call by the gate agent to security without documented reason. That alone was enough. By the time the flight finally began its pushback, Haley had been removed from the floor, quietly. No announcement, no scene. Her name didn't show up on the next day's schedule. A photo surfaced that afternoon. Someone in the terminal had snapped it. Dorian standing calmly near the gate, a phone to his ear, with the caption, "He didn't raise his voice, he didn't move." But the whole airport listened. But stories like this don't always end the way you'd expect. The plane touched down in San Francisco. Dorian was one of the last to leave, taking his time. He didn't check his phone until he was in the back of a black Lincoln. The notifications were stacked. Emails from Horizon execs, a text from Maggie about a draft apology letter, and a link to a local news blog that had picked up on the JFK incident. Nothing viral, nothing explosive, just a quiet ripple moving through the right circles. Inside the conference ballroom, the crowd buzzed. Dorian entered unnoticed at first. As he made his way to the stage, a few recognized him. He exchanged greetings, shook hands. No mention of the airport, just business, the way he preferred it. He took the stage 20 minutes later. His keynote wasn't about Gate 17, not directly. It was about resilience in the food supply chain, about how small assumptions in sourcing, storage, delivery create big consequences. He told a story about a beet farmer who nearly lost his harvest to one missed email, and how that became a turning point. But toward the end, he paused. He looked out at the room, business people, suppliers, researchers, and said, "Sometimes the problem isn't the system. Sometimes it's the shortcuts we take in reading people." There was a moment of stillness. He continued, "Whether we're talking about a new grower, a supplier, or someone standing at a gate with a valid boarding pass, what we assume tells the world more about us than it does about them." That got quiet applause, not thunderous, just real. Afterward, a man from a Seattle firm stopped him. "Hey, that thing you said about shortcuts hit me harder than I thought it would." Dorian smiled. That's where the rot starts, in the shortcuts. Back in New York, Cynthia Reyes reviewed a report. Haley's file was flagged, but Dorian hadn't asked for her to be fired. He hadn't asked for compensation. He hadn't even responded to the offer for a written apology. He didn't need to. The airline's senior staff knew exactly what had happened and how close they'd come to losing more than a contract. In the following weeks, Horizon quietly announced a new partnership with a civil rights advisory group focused on workplace sensitivity and bias prevention. A few press outlets connected the dots. Dorian was mentioned once, indirectly. Recent events reminded us of the work that still needs to be done. Dorian didn't comment. He didn't post. He didn't retweet. He went back to work. And when Maggie asked if he wanted to talk to the press after GQ reached out, he said, "Tell them I'm busy feeding people." Weeks passed, then months. And yet the story lingered. Not because it exploded online, but because people remembered it. People who were in the terminal told it over dinner. People who saw his photo started using it in presentations about silent leadership. Gate agents at Horizon started thinking twice before assuming, before calling for backup without reason. And somewhere in Ohio, a retired grocery worker named Eunice Brandt read the article online, smiled to herself, and said aloud in her kitchen, "That's my son." Sometimes the loudest thing you can say is nothing.